Now, I want you to take just a second and imagine just what you could achieve if you would allow yourself to simply believe. One of the things that I am learning in this season as I am helping women go for their promotion is a lot of our promotions are locked up and held hostage by our disappointment. We had experiences that has now made us begin to play small because we tried before and it didn't happen for us. I want you to set your promotion free. I want you to release your hope and believe in what's possible for you. And today we're going to talk more about just how you can do that. Now let's get into it. For the longest time, I secretly wanted more. I often found myself shrinking to fit in, settling for what was comfortable, and even selling myself short. Once I finally accepted that we deserve success and we are blessed with the power to achieve it, I stopped playing small. I'm serious about building a life I love, and you should be too. I'm Denise Taylor of DeniseTaylor.live, and welcome to Embrace Your Power. I help women prioritize themselves, their success, and their happiness. Now let's meet this week's achiever whose story will inspire you to embrace your power and go. Well, hello there. It's Denise Taylor here. You know, I am always excited to have you join me each and every week right here on Embrace Your Power. Now, this is the place where you can always count on me to encourage you to build a life that you love. You see, around these parts, we believe that God has given us power to do it. And when we embrace our power, we can be, do, have, and achieve anything that we want. Now, I will tell you, I believe you'll be divinely inspired to go after the things that God wants to do in your life. And when you do that, you are going to experience satisfaction and fulfillment that's going to light you up from the inside out. And boy, does that ever feel amazing. That is what I want for you. I want you to feel amazing. Now, season 2 is focused on achieving the career success that you want and deserve. I want you to become a power leader. Now, you may be asking yourself, Denise, what is a power leader? A power leader is a woman leader who is using the skills, the savvy, and the momentum to create the success that she wants to achieve in her career. And that is what I want for you. I want you to build up your bank of skills. I want you to ignite your savvy. And I want you to create unstoppable momentum so that you can get all of the things that you want in the workplace, in your career. Now, I'll tell you the reason why that's important. It's because when we talk about building a life that you love, we devote so much of our time and ourselves in the workplace. And so it only makes sense that getting success there is going to be a big part of building a life that we love. And so in this season, I am making meaningful deposits into your life so that we can see that come to pass. The people that are joining me in season 2 are just phenomenal. These incredible women are coming to this stage to talk about their career success, how they have navigated difficult moments, and how they are making marks in corporate America each and every day. And so I want to invite you to do something unique this season. I want to invite you to get a journal and label it Embrace Your Power. And here's the reason why. There are so many incredible nuggets that are going to be shared each and every week. And I want you to take notes. Those notes are going to become that foundation that's going to help jumpstart your success. But even more than that, when you're ready to accelerate, I'm your girl. When you're ready to go after that success and achieve your goals, I would love to partner with you on your journey so that we can make that happen. We're going to begin with you taking notes. We're going to progress to us working together. And so I want to invite you to be intentional about the time that we're spending together, because these deposits are going to be priceless each and every week. Now, I want to remind you of the success superpowers. They're still very valid and they're still very relevant, even in these career conversations. The success superpowers, as a reminder, number 1 is see yourself successful. Number 2 is shake off fear. Number 3 is do the work. Number 4 is take care of you. And number 5 is hold fast to your faith. And the reason why I bring them up today is because when I think about my guest and I think about her testimony, she permeates putting each and every one of those success superpowers to work in her lives. Triyoko Boatright, she tells me the story about how she had to get out of her own way. She was living paycheck to paycheck, and she had to really realize that she wanted more for herself and for her children. But she knew the only way to really get to the opportunities that she saw could be possible for her to seize was to embrace her power and really begin to take steps in the direction of the change that she wanted to see happen in her life. And so the conversation we are going to have today is going to talk about how you get out of your own way, how you deal with being passed over for positions that you really want, and how you ultimately accelerate your success to begin to achieve exactly what you want in the workplace. Many of us have had that disappointment where we wanted a position and we got passed over. And Triyoko and I talk about that a lot. So I can't wait for you to really glean from her experience. So why delay anymore? Let's get into it, and I'll see you on the other side. So I am so excited for the conversation today. Anytime I can have a conversation with someone who blends all of their uniqueness along with their faith, along with all of their passions for success, I know I am going to have a dynamic conversation all the way through. And Triyoko is joining me today to talk about her career success, as well as some of her personal aspirations. We're going to unpack what we can from her journey so that we can understand how to accelerate our own success as well. And so do me a favor, why don't you introduce yourself before we jump in?
Yeah, so good to be here, Denise. Thank you so much for having me. As you mentioned, I am Triyoko Boatright. I am a Southern, sophisticated young lady from small town, Thompson, Georgia, not far from Augusta, Georgia. I have 2 lovely, amazing adult children, and I am the proud glam-mother of a little baby boy that'll be turning 1-year-old on next month. So that is my family. Come from a family where, our values were very important for us. And I started off after I graduated high school, moved to Atlanta for a little bit, didn't really know what I wanted to do. Stayed there for like 12, 13 years, doing the odd-end jobs and all of that. But I always knew that I wanted to be a professional. Always knew that. So I came back home. My mom, my grandfather passed away. My mom gave me a house. And it was then that I got fired. First time ever getting fired from working at a bank. Got fired and decided to go to school, go to college. So I got my associate's degree in Secretary of Science, right? And that opened the door for me to go into corporate America. And from there, I realized that wasn't just enough. So I went back to get my bachelor's degree in business, and then went further to get a master's in business as well, my MBA. And then I ended it with my master's of theology, sorry. So, just thinking about the way that I entered into corporate America was a little bit strange because, again, I looked at a little bit old girl from Thompson, Georgia, country girl, did not see myself in corporate America because we only saw other people, our white Caucasians in there. Whether it was television or when you went to corporate America, that's what you saw. I went through a temp agency. Interesting. Did so well that they were like, hey, we want to hire you on permanently. And honestly, from there, it just went uphill. You know, I started at a hospital. Again, they promoted me because they saw that I was doing such a good job, the knowledge that I had, the way I was building relationships, you know, with people. And then as I continued to further my education, opportunities were landed in my lap. You know, I know, interesting, they were landed in my lap. And I mean, now I can say that I am pretty much like a leader in the organization where I'm working at now. Mm-hmm. Absolutely love what I do. I love training and development, loving helping people to grow in their role as a leader. That's a little bit about my career and, you know, my life a little bit.
That's awesome. So let's unpack a few things. I think one of the things that I find most impressive is how you created your own hunger and thirst after education. Mm-hmm. So at some point, it illuminated to you that that was something you needed to invest yourself in once you kind of got into a workplace setting. What kind of triggered that for you?
Let me be extremely honest. Living from check to check. I had 2 babies and I realized this just cannot be the life. I am intelligent, you know, I am smart, I am articulate. And so realizing that there was more to life. So when I got that first associate's degree, I thought that was going to be it. But I began telling my children at a very young age, you have 2 choices. It's military or college. And as I was explaining that to them, what I realized also was I needed to be a better example for them. Mm-hmm. And the more that I learned about corporate America, the more that I began to walk in my passion, the more I desired. Mm-hmm. So the more I realized that I needed to go to school, honestly, just to learn a little bit more, right? How to navigate in certain situations, you know, how to show up at certain tables. And it was important for me to go and get that information, that knowledge, but then also to show my children, you can do it a right way, your right way, not anybody else's right way. And I will say this to you, Denise, it has paid off for my children. They both are adult children, successful in their own right, decided to do the education route. My daughter just graduated with her MBA as well. So that was the driving force for me, living from paycheck to paycheck and realizing that I was standing in my own way, mm-hmm. and that I had the opportunity to go as far as I wanted to go.
I love that. So, so powerful. And when I think of your path, right, I think of you recognizing the value of what I call a success journey, right? Because you kept achieving, but yet still going, achieving, but yet still going. And so I guess the question I would ask for you is, can you define for us what success means to you?
Ooh, for me, success is pretty much setting a goal, your own goal, and accomplishing that goal. And success is not defined by how many degrees you have. Is not defined, in my opinion, by your status, your position, or your title, but rather the way that you impact a person and the influence that you leave on a person, right? When you think about impact and influence, they're 2 different things. Impact can cause a mind shift momentarily. So that's good because you may have people thinking differently. But I don't want to just think about success as just making an impact, but how have you influenced someone differently, that they transform the way that they think, the way that they act, the way that they treat people. So when you're showing up different. So for me, success is whatever goal you have set, you accomplish that goal, but then it's not just left about you. You further it on to someone else, right? You impact someone's life, but then you leave an influence to help someone transform their life as well.
Yeah, I can definitely relate to that because I think one of the things that was pretty integral, well, not I think, but I know for me kind of setting off and doing what I do now is I felt like God said to me I needed to transcend success and be significant. And that's what I hear you saying, because to me, significance was all about being seen, being heard, and
Mm.
serving in life-changing ways. And in some respects, you could be successful and not do any of those things. But when you really recognize and take on the responsibility to influence and to impact, like you talked about, and to even prioritize doing so, I think you begin to experience success or the fruit of success in such a different way. And so it sounds like you're doing a lot of that in your everyday leadership style. And so tell me a little bit, because you're in the training and development space. What did you learn most about human capital in that experience to help make you a better leader?
Ooh, I will say what I learned was to be loyal to the assignment and not the people of that position, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what I learned about my quality, the value that I bring, no one can take that from me, right? So in order to be a better leader, I realized that I had to be loyal to what God had assigned me to do and the people that God had placed in my life. And every opportunity that I had to be influential in those individuals' lives, that's what I was assigned to do, and that's what I was created to do, and that's just what I did, right?
Mm-hmm.
So no matter how much you try to, or you try to take away or tell me I'm not doing something right, right? What I realized about learning and development as I was helping others to learn and development, let me be loyal to this particular assignment today and not so much to the people of that position,
Mm-hmm.
because there's someone at that particular moment that needs me to smile, to give an encouraging word, to show them what leadership looks like.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make
Sometimes we are in situations, and you and I talked about this before, and I understand what's behind what you're saying now, because when you are passed over for positions, when you can recognize that you're being overlooked, whether it's overt or covert, or, all the biases and dynamics that can come into play, recognizing purpose and still being there and still showing up and still being honorable to what you're called to do is extremely important. But when those things happen, it's often hard not to take it personal, right?
Mhm.
When you have aspirations and you feel as though you're checking all the boxes and you feel as though you're doing all the right things and your performance is strong, it's hard not to take it personal when you experience the Passover and try to stay loyal to the assignment. So unpack a little for us, if you don't mind, in those instances when you had that experience. How did you not allow it to be taken personally and rise above in the way you've explained?
Ooh, Denise, being passed over, right? And I think at some point in all of our lives that will happen.
Mm-hmm.
And especially when we know we're qualified, we've been doing the work, you've even shown interest, right, in being promoted. You asked for mentorship. I'm
Mm-hmm.
gonna be very extremely human right now. I will not tell you that I took this with ease. I was all up in my emotion.
Mm-hmm.
And I think when we think about the emotional wheel, there was not enough emotions on that wheel for me to choose, what I was feeling when I was passed over. And I think too oftentimes we try to dismiss our feelings, Denise, or allow others to tell us that it's okay or this just not God's time. What I realized when I was passed over is allow me to feel what I'm feeling, because what I am feeling, it is real. But what I had to understand was I could not continue to operate in those emotions because if I did, it would become a state of mind.
Mm.
And if I allow those emotions to become a state of mind, I was going to be bitter. I was going to be resentful. I was not going to show up, because the way we show up matters. I wasn't going to show up doing what I knew I was supposed to be doing. So what did I do? I had to accept the fact that I was passed over, period. It's just what it is. Then I had to make the decision to continue to show up and do what I was called to do what I was being paid to do. Let me just be honest. I had to show up and still be innovative with ideas. I still had to show up and train the person that got the position. Right. We know about that. And I had to show up and, honestly, even with the person that I trained, for them to say, I'm confused. Why didn't you just get this position? And this is just what I said. I really don't know. I can't really explain that to you. So how I dealt with it was to be in my emotions for a little, but then making the decision to get out of my emotions so it would not become a state of mind. Because that Passover or not being chosen for the position did not determine the level of my success and where I was going to go.
That is so powerful. One of the things I love to say is that disappointment unchecked will become resentment, and resentment unchecked becomes bitterness, and bitterness unchecked becomes hate. And none of those things are on the spectrum of what God is calling us to do. I do love the fact that you said you had to feel the feels, because you're right. So many times we create these perspectives for people that what you feel is not legitimate. God gave you your feelings, but he doesn't want you to get stuck there. And I think that's the valuable nugget in what you are expressing. I believe that your feelings indicate typically something that you need to address, right? They usually shine the light on something in you that needs to be addressed. And if we can begin to feel it and then begin to assess it, we can grow in that experience and mature and become better. And so I love the fact that you said feel it, but I also just really love the fact that you said you got to keep going. And what I do see some people do in those moments of disappointment is they don't maintain the level of performance. They start showing up late. They start not participating well. Their work starts to degrade. And when you do that, you now cause other factors to come into play that work against you. And so I love the advice that you have given. Now, here's my follow-up question for you. In that moment, whether it was accurate or inaccurate, hopefully you got some feedback, right? Hopefully something was said to give you some inkling as to why. The reason why I bring that up is because sometimes for us, it's hard to reconcile that. It's hard to reconcile the feedback that you're getting versus your impressions of what's happening or what's really going on. Did you find that you needed to work through anything when you've had experiences where you're getting feedback, but you can't reconcile it?
I didn't get any feedback from being passed over, to be extremely honest. But I will share, it was one morning I was in my office, like 4 a.m. And I was married at the time, and he had to be to work extremely. We worked at the same place. I remember being in worship that morning, and I was listening to the song, Here's My Worship. And as I am on my knees praying and like, God, this day, go ahead and go before me this day, right? Honestly, this is what I heard God. The feedback is what I got from God, to be honest. Everything that you do, even on this job, is worship. I need to know that I can trust you in this assignment. And I was like, what are you talking about, right? And it was kind of hard for me to swallow because I was asking the questions of myself. Where have I not been faithful, where you couldn't trust me with just this assignment? And there were areas, I'll be honest, that he just showed, to your point, even if it didn't come out of my mouth, if I was thinking it. Come on, right? Even if you showed up in a meeting and your posture was probably good, your disposition was probably good, but maybe something slipped out of your mouth, and then the tone that you use, was just not a tone that you should have used. So I think in being checked in that manner, because I asked for feedback. What's the reason why did I not get this promotion, or why was I not even considered for the promotion? Oh, well, and that was just it, right? So I feel for myself, the feedback that I got from God that day was he needed to know that he could trust me in any assignment. Mm-hmm. Because I was basing my worth on people, what people thought, how they value, what I brought to the table or what I could do, versus focusing on, can God trust me? What does God say about my behavior? What does he say about the work that I present? And that, for me, has really helped me, Denise, as I've continued in my career.
I love that because well, you and I talked about them briefly before, that I talk a lot about the success superpowers. And number 5 is hold fast to your faith. Mm-hmm. And the reason why I believe that is so integral and critical to our success is because when we face days of contradiction, right? We expected it to go right and it goes left. We expected it to go up and it goes down, right? We are experiencing this day of contradiction. You need your faith to go back to. And so in the face of you not being able to get the feedback from man, God still gave you feedback to propel you forward, which I think is extremely powerful. And it also is an asset and benefit of our faith, that if we can't get the guidance that we need from those that we are subject to in any kind of way, God will always come through and honor the relationship that we have with him. And so I think that is extremely valuable. The other reason why I believe that holding fast to your faith is so important is in those moments when it's really hard, it's what you can go to get the support that you need, to get the guidance that you need. It's reliable. And it does 2 things in particular. It gives you peace and it gives you hope. And in that moment of restoration that you were spending with God in your moment of worship, he was able to do that for you. He was able to give you peace with what was going on and to give you hope and to remind you ultimately who you actually work for.
Absolutely. Totally agree with you. I like how you talked about the faith aspect, right? And, no matter where we go, even into the marketplace, there is ministry, marketplace ministry. And what did he tell us? People will know that we are his disciples. They'll know who we are, by the way that we love. Even though I had been looked over, passed over, treated unfairly so many times, Denise, you know what I continued to do? Show up in love. I continue to not put my mouth on those leaders, to be extreme. I just didn't. Even when people came and wanted me to say things, that is just not fair. And I said, this life isn't fair. And we know definitely that people are not fair. But, hey, we know who is fair at all times. So for me, what I had to realize was, if that's the key thing, if I profess out of my mouth that I am Christ-like, that I am a believer, I have to possess it in my heart too. That's 2 different things. And when I possess it in my heart, I can walk it out. So I still got to do what? Love those, even in the marketplace, that despitefully use me, right? That come up against me, that do not value the worth that I have. Jesus was no exception. They did the exact same thing to him. So what makes us feel, because we are devout believers and because we are going into the workplace, marketplace, that we will not exhibit or we will not experience what he experienced? It's going to be there as well. So I just continue to show up as a believer, with Christ-like attributes. That's it.
Yeah, I love that. And I love the priority of doing so, right? And I believe that that's what ultimately gets honored by the one who's in control of everything. So let me ask you this question, because one part of your career really anchored around advocacy, right? And you really took on a role of advocating for patients. You learned how to advocate for staff. What did you discover was the secret at being successful in that role of advocating?
Oh, the success for me was realizing that I knew that I could make a difference, right? In the lives of patients and families and even our staff. When people are treated unfairly, for me, it was just maybe for me just to sit and listen to their story, but then go also to, I may not go in the street and advocate for people. But what I realized was, with my knowledge, with my experience, I can go and sit at a table where others were not permitted to sit at a table. I had developed relationships where people listened to me. And so for me, the secret was knowing that I could make a difference in the lives of those patients, family, staff, but then also help another leader gain respect that they would never know how to get respect from those patients' families or those staff members.
Mm-hmm. And I guess that was a little bit of a preparing ground for the role that you're sitting in now, right? Where you're really leading diversity, equity, and inclusion. When you think about how it's evolved and the scope of things now and the sense of advocacy that you're showing up to do at this point, what's most important for this role as a leader for DE&I?
Oh, I think for me, the most important thing is that, we show fairness all around the board, right? Making sure every person, every single time that we treat them with dignity and respect. It doesn't matter your age, sexual orientation, your religion. For me, it's just about making sure that every single person is looked at as a human that is being a human being. And I think for me, it's the dignity and respect part, showing fairness across the board, and knowing that I have a voice, and that where others may not want to speak up, that I have a voice where I can speak up professionally, right, and be authentic still, and that I can help make some change.
Yeah, I think it's so powerful that you've had some experiences that has developed so much empathy in you from your own journey that now when you sit in this seat, you can be very responsive in a way that shows the right degree of compassion, right? Because once you're going through experiences of being passed over or even dealing with microaggressions, which we'll talk about in just a second, it really prepares you to believe that person on the other side of the table. Because I think one of the things that is a struggle is that when people are having experiences, if they're so unlike you, you often have a hard time believing that it could be the case for that person. And that I think that's one of the things that breeds so much empathy in the hearts of people who experience trauma, because you've been there and done that, very similar to your experience in the marketplace. So tell me a little bit about how you are able to translate everything that you've been through to serve those that you're leading in this position.
Oh, wow. I I know what it looks like to be looked over for the color of my skin. Let's be honest. I know what that looks like, and so I'm able now to help speak up to say, but are they the most qualified person for this position? Regardless, I know what it looks like to have this type of have experienced this type of trauma, workplace trauma, and personal trauma, right? Because I don't care who we are, our personal and our professional kind of blends too, right? And so to your point, being able to make the decision to be vulnerable, to show empathy, to walk in someone else's shoes, to feel what they feel, it's important for me because I've been there. And so oftentimes we look at the outer shell of a person and we really don't know their story, right? So I am able to help with hiring decisions. When you think about that, I am able to make sure that they don't have to bring their own seat to the table. We're going to pull the seat up for them and place them at the table, as well. So I think it helps me. It gives me joy. Let me just say that, to be able to speak up for marginalized people.
Mm-hmm.
Period.
Yeah.
It helps me to help them know that there is people, not just me, but there are people that is looking out for the greater good of everybody.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. And I imagine now, if we were to go to people who have less experience and exposure in this space, you probably run into conversations where sometimes this dialogue is welcome and sometimes it may not be welcomed. What do you do when you run into that harsh perspective that you kind of have to till the soil, if you will, to get them to understand the value of this work, and the fairness of doing this and why it's important? Those attitudes of people who just don't believe that it's necessary.
We do understand there are some people that we will never reach, right? There are some people that we'll never get through to. And I do believe in those times we just have to agree to agree, right? And I know we hear a lot about agree to disagree. Agree to agree for me is just respect across the board. I'm going to respect what you have to say, and I'm hoping that you'll do the same for me. Now, how can we, on this respectable table at this point, what can we do now together, right, to make sure that every single person deserves a chance, right? We make sure that they deserve a chance. Oftentimes, though, when you run into resistance, I've learned to be silent in that moment. I believe oftentimes that silence will speak enough at that time that this may not be the time to try to fight the battle. So let's walk away. And when we reconvene, because we will have to reconvene at some point, hopefully we are coming back with level heads at this moment. Mm-hmm. And even when people are making harsh statements or comments, even in that time, I think for a long time, or we live in a society now, Denise, where we feel like we have to have the last word. I gotta make sure I say my say. Let me give them a piece of my mind. No, what I realized in my time in this walk, in this professional career, especially now with DE&I, or diversity, inclusion, and belonging, is every statement does not require my rebuttal, right? Because, and I'm going to say this, even in the workplace, we realize that we have fools, and excuse my language, we have fools in the workplace, but a fool will not argue by themselves. They will not continue to talk very long by themselves. So I've learned this is not the battle today for me to try to fight. Let me just remain silent. Mm-hmm. And oftentimes I reword things, Denise, to make them think they came up with the idea. Mm-hmm. And sometimes we just have to do that. Martin Luther King did it oftentimes as well, right? Mm-hmm. Even if you feel that you came up with it, the ultimate goal, right, is accomplished. Mm-hmm. That we wanted to leave with an action plan. Mm-hmm. And as long as we're leaving this table with an action plan, the goal has been achieved, mm-hmm. even if you think you did it.
Mm-hmm. I love that. And I also love the perspective of agree to agree, because in hearing you describe that, it puts the emphasis on respect. Yeah. And I don't believe that we have to disagree. I just need you to understand where I'm coming from. And I also love the strategy, because I too understand the importance of allowing people to sit in it, because sometimes when you have a chance to digest exactly what you're saying and the perspectives of the room versus what you're saying, and you sit in that, you can draw the appropriate conclusions to be a part of your own rescue, right? And so I love that as a strategy as well. Now, I want to ask you a few questions about microaggressions, because we hear that term a lot. In your own words, describe that reference and give us a few examples of what that actually looks like.
Some people would identify microaggressions with being passive aggressive. I guess you could use that too. But for me, it's like hidden messages, subtle hidden messages, whether they're intentional or unintentional. It can be verbal, nonverbal, and they're insults, right? And so let's think about it. So I think micro insults are considered to when someone may say, I would not have expected you to be so articulate. Because maybe somebody came from the hood, as they say, or they were as not as fortunate as other people. And then they showed up and, they're very articulate in meetings. You have people that will do micro assaulting, right? They'll look at you and probably say, you really don't belong here. And this happens, and we think that it really does. And people have become professional microaggressors because it's the way that they may say something like, like micro-environmental is, you're not who we normally would see in this role. What do you mean? Right? And I remember someone saying to me, well, I know what your role is, but if you can't do it, I can get someone else to do it. Oh, okay. Well, who said that I couldn't do it? Right? Well, you haven't shown me that you can do it. Well, who are you? Mm-hmm. But at those times, and let me just be honest, because people are professional microaggressors now, you can, if you're not aware of what's going on, Denise, the subtleness of it, right? You will leave a meeting and ask yourself, what just happened? Mm-hmm. What did I do wrong? Mm-hmm. So it's important for us, to know who we are, know our value, to show up in all those ways, because if not, they will microaggress you to the point where you will need therapy. And that is real, mm-hmm. Right? It's just subtle. And then when you call them out, Denise, but I didn't really say it and mean it that way. Yes, you did. Mm-hmm. You did, but you got caught. You thought I didn't know what you were saying. Mm-hmm. But now that or I'm calling you back on what you said, and now you want to change what you're saying. Mm-hmm. It's real. Mm-hmm. And I'm not going to, it happens to people, if someone is gay, right? Oh, I wouldn't expect for you. You don't look like somebody that's gay. Well, what does a gay person look like, right? Mm-hmm. It's just so subtle, Denise. And if we are not careful, we can do it to someone too. Mm-hmm. And we do it to each other, mm-hmm. because we reached a certain status, mm-hmm. and now we're looking down, forgetting probably where we came from. But just being mindful, honestly, that we are 1 second away from someone else microaggressing us. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. I love that you called out, just very briefly, and we'll go deeper with it now, about the power of self-esteem, about the power of self-worth and even self-value to help in these scenarios and in the workplace in general. So unpack that. How do those things really become a key to our success?
Ooh, self-esteem, self-worth, self-value is so important. I remember growing up, Denise, even though my parents, our community, they were drilling in all of the neighborhood kids about who we are, how beautiful we are, how smart we were. But then, you go to school and you got, you have all these people that are saying otherwise, and then you take that with you into the workplace. It is so important to know who you are, right? To develop your own self-worth, your own self-value, And then your self-esteem. And oftentimes we have to do this for ourselves. Our parents have done a great job, but we have to keep the work up. It is important for us to know who we are because someone else will tell us who we are if we don't know who we are. So therefore, we're not marching based on our own beat, right? We're marching to the beat of somebody else or what society tells us, who we should be, how we should act, how we should value ourselves. But not only should we know who we are, but whose we are, especially if you are a believer, right? God says that we are wonderfully and beautifully made. Mm-hmm. And I love Ephesians 3:20, but we forget about that B clause. God can do exceedingly abundantly above all that we can ask or think, but it's according to the power that works on the inside of us. Knowing our own self-esteem, self-worth, self-value helps us to understand the power that we possess. Mm-hmm. Not what society tells us we possess, but that we possess. I don't have the same power that Denise has. Mm-hmm. But whatever power I do possess, I need to know it and I need to walk in that. Mm-hmm. It's so important. And I don't really read a lot of self-help books, to be honest with you. What I do is I speak to myself. Mm-hmm. Right. I have to speak to myself to tell myself who I am, right? What I am, how valuable, and I have to know that for myself, mm-hmm. that I'm valuable to myself and for myself, because I can't be anything to anybody else. Mm-hmm. If I don't, I'll take a position. If I don't know my self-esteem, my value, my worth, I'll take any position. Oh, you'll be good for this position. And I don't even like doing that. Mm-hmm. Right? Mm-hmm. They will tell me what I'm worth. Well, we don't want to pay you this because you're not worth it. Well, let me show you this is what I can do, right? It is so important that we know these things, Denise, so that we won't cheat ourselves.
I love that. I love it. I absolutely love it, especially when it comes to embracing your power, because I too believe that God has given us that and we leave it lying so dormant. We have so much power that he has given us. And if we would just activate it, we could really, truly just exceed our own imaginations, exceed our own dreams, if we would lean into that more powerfully. All right. So one of the things that you shared that I also share with you is the experience of being the only one in the room. So you talked about being at a leadership summit. You talked about underrepresentation there. You even talked about leading and speaking at those type of events. And I too have had those experiences of being the only one, so much so that there was like 2 or 3 of us Black women there, and people started walking up to another Black woman saying, "Oh, you did so good." And it wasn't even her, it was me who had done it. But that's a whole nother conversation, because we do not all look alike. I don't care what you say, we just do not. But tell me, how do you navigate the feelings that you have when you walk in and you're the only one in this big sea of faces? How do you handle that?
I belong here. Mm-hmm. Honestly, I had to get to a point where I had to, and I don't fake anything till I make it. I faith it until I make it. So I believed God positioned me there for a reason, right? It was not by happenstance that I was the only one sitting at the table that was of African-American Black descent. It was a reason why I was chosen to be the only person that was of that color to speak. So I just navigated as I belong here, and I show up with that confidence, Denise, that I belong here. I work the room. I walk around. Hello, how are you? I'm Triyoko, if you didn't know, like literally. And so I believe in making sure that when I show up, people know that I am in the room. I am an introvert by nature. But the roles that God has placed me in has caused me in those settings to be an extrovert. So what I don't want it to be is if I show up and then I don't speak to people. I'm antisocial. Oh, no, no, no. Hello, how are you? You know, how's it going? How did you like the conference, right? Um, so I navigated by just showing up, knowing that I belong there. And I'm going to leave an impact, but I'm also going to influence you as well.
So it's time for your empowering moment. Each and every week, I am stopping our episode for an intentional deposit into you. This time is set aside to help you get out of your own way and jumpstart your success. Now, during this time, I'm going to be featuring aspects of my book, Embrace Your Power and Go. So if you have the book, you can follow along with me. Every day throughout the book, there is a corresponding scripture that you can take as a promise. I have written a passage there that should help to motivate you and grow. There's an affirmation that's going to seal the deal of whatever we covered. And there's a section for you to journal your takeaways and goals. Now, we are on day number 3 in that 30-day journey. And the topic is Ain't No Stopping You Now. So as you can imagine, I am going all in on encouraging you to really get out of your own way and do what you know you've been inspired to do. The scripture reference for that day is going to sound so familiar. It's the one that I talk about all the time. For God has not given us a spirit of fear, but of power and of love and of sound mind. That's 2 Timothy 1:7. It should sound familiar because that's exactly the crux of this entire platform, Embrace Your Power. Now, on that day, here's the affirmation that has been put together for you. I am unstoppable because God has given me power, love, and a sound mind. I am empowered to overcome every obstacle. I am loved beyond limits. I can achieve the impossible because I have the mind of Christ. Now, if that resonates with you and you don't have a copy of the book, go ahead and put your prime to work. The book is available on Amazon right now. The title of the book again is Embrace Your Power and Go. Now, more than that, if you have aspirations that you truly need to get started on, I invite you to book a call with me. It's easy to access my calendar. It's easy to grab a time. And when you do, I will give you a call and we'll talk about what it is you're looking to achieve. You can access my calendar at www.callwithdenise.live. And I want you to know my sweet spot is helping you get out of your own way. I am all about helping you build a life that you love and get to the success that you want and desire. I believe you deserve that. So I look forward to talking soon. Now let's get back into it. Okay, so now that we're back, I want to tap into your wisdom. I believe that we go through a lot of experiences and we get from those experiences the most valuable thing, and that is wisdom. So around here, I love to understand more about your power leader advice. So I have some questions for you. What is the best advice you have for women who are feeling stretched? They're either stretched by transition, they're stretched by opposition, opportunity, or pressures to perform. What would you say to them?
I would say to them to always remain in a position for transition, right? And what does that look like? We never know, what is going to be thrown our way, and it may stretch us. So when you feel overwhelmed, take a moment to breathe and regroup. And what does that look like at work or wherever? You have to have a partner that is going to, when you come into that room, you may speak about what's going on, but you're going to leave a different way, right? So remain in a position for transition, even when you're being stretched. Oftentimes you got to take the moment to take a breather and regroup.
Okay, I love that. What is your best advice for a woman who is struggling to fit in at work? They are finding it hard to be accepted or understood.
Wow. I don't feel we should go to work, number one, to make friends or to fit in, to be honest with you. We were never designed to fit in anywhere. I'm not asking for you to accept me. You will respect me though. So I think instead of going to look to fit in or to be accepted for myself, the most important thing is to respect me.
I
Yeah.
love that. And then finally, what's your best advice for women wanting to advance their career and get to the next level?
Ooh, I will say embrace where you are right now, right? Making sure that you are trustworthy of the position or wherever you are in your life right now. Also, I'll say to get a mentor. It's important, male and female, right? It's good to hear from both spectrums. And with that mentor, make sure that you remain teachable. There's always something, that we can learn. Um, Position yourself around someone that's smarter than you are. That's always important, because oftentimes we think that we are really smart, let's be honest, but then there's always someone that knows a little bit more than you. I think last but not least, Denise, is to be intentional and strategic about creating your own personal brand, because your personal brand will spill over into your professional brand as well.
I love that.
What sets you apart, right?
I love that. And so I talk a lot about what I call 12 power leader skills, right? And I feel like these are the things that especially women of color, Black women, need to know in corporate America, these skills. And so instead of allowing you to respond to all 12, I'm going to have you pick three numbers between 1 and 12. And then depending on which ones you pick, we'll get your best advice for that skill.
Between 1 and 12,
Mm-hmm.
let's see, 4,
Mm-hmm.
5,
Mm-hmm.
and 9.
And 9. All right. So, what is your best advice for how to lead without being off putting to others?
Ooh, ooh. Oh, I would say just remember at one point um, that you were probably in their shoes at one point too.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Yeah. Yeah, you were. Yeah, just remember where you came from, and you were probably in their shoes. And if not those particular shoes, something very similar.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I love that. And here's number 5. What's your best advice for how to speak up without being overpowering?
Oh, I would say just be assertive, right? And expressing your thoughts and your ideas and your expectations um, in a self assured and considerate way.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And then finally, number 9, what's your best advice on how to leverage your Black girl magic edge and swagger?
Girl, just show up, be your authentic self, and be influential.
I
Yeah.
love that. I knew that one was going to fit. You was going to be like, girl, please, child. I love it. I love it. So around these parts, for as long as the podcast has been in existence, I have been asking these 3 questions to dive more into wisdom, just like we just did. So here's the first one. What would you tell your younger self about life if you could?
Ooh. What would I tell my younger self about life if I could? Oh, live life like there is no tomorrow, right? Um, do not conform to the societal norms on what your life should look like. That's important for me. Be authentic and live the abundant life.
Mhm.
Live an abundant life.
I
Yeah.
love that. Love wisdom. What would you tell your younger self about love if you could?
Oh, choose yourself first. Like
Mhm.
choose to love yourself first. and then you could genuinely love others.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I like that. And then finally, happiness wisdom. What would you tell your younger self about happiness if you could?
About happiness. That I create my own happiness, mm-hmm. not based on anyone else's. Mm-hmm. Yeah. They are, everybody else and everything else is an addition to what I already have on the inside of me. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I love it. All right. So how can listeners get in touch with you, connected with you, if they would love to make that connection?
I am on social media platforms. Not a lot, but I'm on there. If you're looking for me on Facebook, I'm simply just Triyoko Boatright on Facebook. But Twitter and Instagram, I am simply Triyoko. That's what it is, simply SIMPOY, Triyoko. Because I believe that I am just simply, I'm a very simplistic person who is mad about life. Making a difference in the lives of those individuals that I encounter every single day. Yeah.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for being here. Can I tell you one last thing? Success looks so good on you.
Thank you so much. And it looks very well on you as well.
Thank you. So I hope you followed my advice and got a notebook and took some notes. There were so many nuggets peppered all throughout this entire conversation that will encourage you in the days ahead. So here's a couple that stuck out to me. We talked about knowing the value that you bring and really knowing that no one can take that from you. You see, that's extremely powerful because everywhere you are, every place you show up, you bring that value, especially to work. And so knowing your worth is going to help you be more resolved and confident in expecting to show up for your role, but also expecting to get the value in return. You have right expectation to accelerate your career. The other thing that stuck out to me was when Triyoko talked about everything you do is worship. Can God trust you with the assignment? You see, she talked about that in relation to being passed over for a position, but having to show up and even train the person who got the job. That's a difficult spot to be in, but I will say that God was grooming her for something greater, and he had to know that he could trust her to be faithful to him above all else. You see, in our journey, we are going to have to rely on our faith. I talked about how we will be able to see the success superpowers peppered throughout the entire conversation with her. And I think you can agree they were all present. She talked about seeing herself successful. She talked about shaking off fear. She talked about doing the work. She talked about taking care of herself, and she talked about holding fast to her faith. You see, our faith becomes critically important when we face days of contradiction. And when we get passed over for a position, we have disappointment set in, and that is certainly a day of contradiction. And it's at that time and in that moment that we need our faith to help us get through what it is that we feel, what it is that we're experiencing, and help us to realize that our value is still intact. What I want to encourage you, especially if you have been in a situation where you got passed over, is that your promotion is still available. Your success is still available. It is still out there for you to make the right impact so you can seize that opportunity. But in those moments, it is always good to get help. You see, getting help will allow you to really draw on strength when you feel a little discouraged and a little weak. And so I would love the opportunity to help you navigate to your career success. And if you're ready for that, if you know you want to achieve that next level success, then here's what you need to do. You first need to release your faith. You need to restore your expectation. You need to believe like never before. And the second thing you need to do is get help. One of the things that we tell ourselves often is that we'll figure it out on our own. But I want you to really allow yourself to be available for support and for help. I would love the opportunity to help you achieve your next level. Not just believe for it, but achieve it. And if you're ready for that, if you want to get to your next level of success, the best way to make this happen is for me to have a conversation with you. It's pretty simple. If you visit my website, www.callwithdenise, you'll access my calendar directly. You'll book a time for us, and I will call you on the phone. It all starts with a conversation, which is pretty simple. So access my calendar today at www.callwithdenise.live. Grab a time for us. I'll give you a call, and we will figure out the best next steps for you to take. Thanks for tuning in today. Now, if this was good to you, do me a favor. Leave a rating and review and share it with a friend. I will look forward to seeing you next week. Now, if you love this episode, you're going to want to access the free resource I curated just for you. The Power Leader Toolkit is absolutely free, and it includes 3 power-packed career transforming resources that will help you change the game and build the career that you want and deserve. It includes my powerful training, The 7 Habits of Highly Successful Women. Now, you can get your hands on this toolkit right now. And as I said, it's absolutely free. You can access it at www.powerleadertoolkit.live. Again, that's www.powerleadertoolkit.live. And of course, I'll be back next week with more power leader strategies to help you transform your career. But until then, remember to always embrace your power and go.